It's 2030, and Vermont has reached a major climate benchmark. We've weatherized and electrified thousands of homes. We've added new housing, but we've cut emissions from buildings dramatically. How did we do it? Back in 2022, we introduced network geothermal systems, quickly generating demand and paving the way for taking this exciting solution to scale. Now village centers are connected to geothermal loops, sharing energy among libraries, schools, stores, and homes. Residents in affordable housing can pay their low energy bills and have safer, healthier indoor air. Vermont farms offer highly efficient housing for workers with ground source heat pumps linked to underground pipes, providing warmth in winter and cooling in summer. Mobile home neighborhoods have paired network geothermal with community solar, keeping costs low and canceling emissions. Smart growth developments are smarter, safer, and more resilient now that thermal loops replace gas pipelines and oil and propane tanks. Former fossil fuel workers are building these systems, earning family-sustaining wages and benefiting from job security. Our vision is a successful energy transition, thanks in part to leveraging network geothermal for a non-emitting, safe, healthy, affordable future for everyone. We don't have to depend on electricity for everything or get stuck burning polluting fuels. We can heat and cool using the temperature under our feet. Underground, vertical pipes bring 55-degree water to horizontal pipes that loop between buildings and indoor ground source heat pumps. Homes and buildings share different thermal needs, so energy is never wasted, but is exchanged or stored in the ground until it's needed. Designed to interconnect, these systems can grow over time, balancing the temperature of the water among different thermal sources and sinks, from hockey rinks to hospitals. These systems are already operational. Colorado Mesa University has relied on network thermal for 12 years and never once used its gas backup. In Toronto, 312 households have a projected 80% reduction in emissions from the networked system and 100% from buildings. One Texas development is growing to include 7,500 homes, 2 million square feet of commercial space, and 2 schools on network geothermal. Projects are coming online in New York, Massachusetts, and DC, with feasibility studies in Oregon, Minnesota, and Philadelphia. As a small state, we can move quickly to put network geothermal to work. In the next year, we'll engage local and state leaders, establish a resource bank of materials, collect data on potential locations, research innovative ownership models, initiate needed policy changes, and broadcast these solutions via events and media. We'll also launch the Vermont Community Geothermal Alliance, a new statewide network for information and planning. And we'll represent Vermont on the National Network Geothermal Coalition, hosted by Building Decarbonization Coalition. This first year will position us to develop projects and apply for a low-interest federal loan to kickstart implementation.
As a climate economist, I've delved deeply into energy costs and policies in several states. I'm joining this team because if it's done right, network geothermal systems can be made accessible and affordable to everyone, particularly low-income households.
To end our reliance on fossil fuels, we need to diversify our energy technologies, reduce the distance between the sources and the people using the energy, and allow people to directly own and make decisions about the systems. We know geothermal can help us meet these challenges. Now we need to support shared learning across Vermont communities to make network geothermal a common practice.
I'm ready to train our students in network geothermal engineering and construction. If I know there's demand and jobs, I can build the curriculum.
We need to make sure workers and communities are put above profits. We can do this through green justice zones, which would require projects such as network geothermal to use union labor and high labor standards, in addition to centering BIPOC and low-income communities.
I've been representing citizens groups and Native peoples against large hydro and fossil fuel projects since 1989. It has become clear to me that thermal energy networks are vastly preferable to fossil fuels and large hydro and can help us avoid substituting biofuels and other damaging new energy sources that may be as bad as the fossil fuels they replace.
While we differ on some energy choices, we now have a shared purpose.
VGS is responding to the intense demand for new housing that is both affordable and decarbonized. We've launched an internal task force to develop a new service to deploy networked geothermal systems at scale.
We agree that networked geothermal is a powerful energy solution for many Vermont communities, starting with affordable housing and low-income neighborhoods.
We're learning to do something different and putting resources behind it. We're small and agile enough to do it, and we hope people see us as a resource.
Your vote for this project puts networked geothermal on the table now and helps us all take a giant step toward meeting our climate goals by realizing the potential of this proven solution. We're moving forward. We hope you'll join us.
Okay, our first question is for networked geothermal. And the question is, how much money is required for networked geothermal systems, and how do these systems compare on a dollar per ton reduced metric relative to other clean heat options? Yeah, just push that up. Okay. There you go.
So I can start answering, and then maybe Richard could jump in. First, I just want to emphasize that what we have in this pitch is a parallel tandem effort of a community-based project that I am hoping to lead with other people and what VGS is doing. So there's going to be a lot of information sharing and back and forth between the utility scale and the community scale. Now that said, both efforts face a lot of upfront capital costs. When these systems are in the ground, the residents' bills are going to be incredibly low. The project that's going in the ground in Massachusetts right now in Framingham, they're estimating $9 a month for heating and cooling in residential units. So the upfront capital cost is something we are going to have to address. Happily, the Department of Energy has low interest loans available right now, and those loans are in the billions of dollars total. So I'm going to pass it to Richard and see if he'd like to add anything.
Great. Well, there's two components. My name's Richard. I'm from VGS, maybe one day known as Vermont Geothermal Systems, or right now known as Vermont Gas Systems. There's two components to these geothermal systems, right? There's the inside appliances and the distribution of the heating and cooling in those systems, and those compare favorably with existing clean energy solutions in terms of the inside technologies that would go into people's homes and businesses. And then the second part is the expensive part, right? The extra costs of putting in the ground loops and that kind of construction. It's not inexpensive, it's very expensive. If you're looking at new construction, it's a little bit easier to build a model around that because you have a green field, you're not retrofitting buildings. So you have a good opportunity here with new construction, particularly on the residential side. There is a way to align investment with long-term types of returns. So you can do that. Utility's been doing that for years. It's basically looking at what are those costs, how long is the system going to last, and what are the maintenance on those investments to make sure that they perform. So I think that's the key here, is to match up the systems with the type of investment that's needed to make this work.
Thank you. All right. Okay, networked heat is a utility-style service. Do you envision utility-style regulation to protect consumers, control rates, ensure access for all, etc.?
Thank you for that question. I'd like to answer and then see how he wants to answer this. This is an ongoing discussion right now. My answer is yes. In order to be equitable, we need across-the-board rate setting for these systems. And we need to learn from what's happening in other states. In our presentation, there were many other states that were mentioned. There's a national coalition that right now includes 12 states, and we are representing Vermont there. So we're part of that and can learn from what's happening in other states. But yes, we need to talk about policy, we need to talk about rate setting, and we have an opportunity in Vermont to innovate and to do it equitably, and to have others follow our example.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that Debbie just said at all. In fact, I think it's super important to figure this out from a utility perspective. It's going to look different than natural gas distribution. It's going to look different than a lot of things that we've seen because this is a relatively new solution. This is the one really big innovation in geothermal in the past 30, 40, 50 years. This kind of community loop type style design. And I think that well, we know our customers want it, and we know we can do it as a utility. Particularly gas utilities have those core competencies to actually build underground long-term infrastructure with pipes. So we think this is a good way to, a good overlay of our business model. It's going to look different from a regulatory standpoint, but it's something we can do. Our customers want it, and we have to figure the business model out in the regulatory arena.
Thank you. Okay. Are you envisioning networked geothermal for new smart growth communities or as retrofits?
Yes, absolutely. Everything that's happening in Massachusetts, there are 5 or 6 projects coming online there. That's all retrofits. In Vermont, we need new housing, and that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easy install for network geothermal, but we need to do both because network geothermal works really well for both situations. I'll let Richard talk about what VGS is doing, but I'm interested in making sure we can prove we can do the retrofits in Vermont and that we can also create more housing and start out that housing on clean, safe, inexpensive energy.
So retrofits, as I said before, can be really expensive to do depending on what's happening inside the existing building, distribution systems. If you have houses or buildings that have forced air, it's a little bit easier to retrofit a building like that. But I think that the focus on residential new construction or new construction in general, where there's multiple buildings to be connected, is a really good place to focus because we have to build up the workforce capacity in order to do this work and then scale it. And then we can address a lot of the retrofit model. So from a utility point of view, the way we can actually build capacity and growth is to focus on the green fields and where there's new housing being built, where systems are being put in for the next generation of people, Vermonters.
Thank you. Network geothermal across different owners requires high upfront capital costs. How would you finance it?
We touched on that a little bit earlier, but just to reiterate, I think it's going to have to be a combination of low-income government loans, which are available, as I said, from the Department of Energy. Apparently, they don't want to cut checks smaller than $500 million, so we better come up with a few projects here in Vermont. Great, one back there. Anybody else? So the low-interest loans plus some grants, that is a huge hurdle that we need to overcome. VGS will have its own solutions for that, but we will overlap on some of the low-interest government loans. So in my mind, the investments that we need are out there because there are billions of federal dollars, as I mentioned earlier, available. Vermont is in the lead. If we get our applications in soon, I am confident we are going to get some of that money in our state. And we need to make those kinds of investments rather than other investments that are not going to lower our emissions as effectively as network geothermal can, and lower costs as well.
I think there's geothermal cooling in here. Do you feel that? I think we did touch upon this, but let's just imagine all of our permanently affordable housing partners here in Vermont and the level of pressure to create more housing and also the amount of money available to do so. And let's just think about all those buildings going up. So they're going to build these units, this housing. And so they're going to make that investment in the heating and cooling systems in those buildings. So what's needed is, on the geo side, is to build the loops. So again, I'll take the utility perspective because I work for one, but I actually moved over to VGS because this was a dream that I had about getting utilities involved in geothermal because of the alignment of our investments with energy infrastructure, the competency of our workforce to make these investments, and then to actually build out these systems. So we can invest in the loops, and the developers can invest in the inside appliances and equipment for geothermal.